talk about determining whether your club will participate in the campaign, the basics of planning your event, because the campaign is event centered, making sure that your club is ready to make a great impression on guests when you hold your event, marketing your event, actually holding your event, debriefing and assessing your event, and then developing kind of a mindset that repeated events are a good approach and that your club should consider doing them on an ongoing basis. So first of all, we're going to talk about determining whether your club will participate in the campaign. And, we hope that you will. We're really not trying to pressure you to do so, but we feel that it will be beneficial to your club to do this. But one of the considerations is the purpose of the campaign and whether that purpose aligns with the purposes and plans and mission of your club. And the purpose is really very simple: to hold an event that will attract prospective members to your club, and then ideally to convert at least some of those prospective members into members. So the bottom line is adding members to your club. And I think most of us want to do that. There are a few clubs that like the size they're at, and they don't put a lot of effort into membership building. They're content with where they are. But the problem with that model is that it's just not sustainable. You're eventually going to lose members, and so you're going to have to replace them. So it's really good to be in a membership building mode most of the time, if not all of the time. So the timing of the campaign is that we're asking clubs to put on an event sometime before June 5th of this year. And to consider, even though we're already into February, but to consider trying to do the event in the time frame of, for example, right now till the end of March, because we're into the Talk Up Toastmasters campaign put on by Toastmasters International, so that if you were to be able to put on your event within that time frame and you would gain 5 members from it, you would have the added benefit of getting a little discount from the TI store, as well as a banner for your ribbon, a banner for your ribbon, a ribbon for your banner. Um, so that's a nice little perk if you want to have your campaign, have your event at that time. And then also what the district will provide and what the district needs for your club, from your club. And what the district is providing is, for one thing, these webinars, the training and education to be able to put on this campaign, and also ongoing documentation in the form of several web pages. And then for the event itself, we're going to provide you with marketing materials, and in one case, sort of curricular materials. And in terms of what we need from your club is basically commitment. So we're asking clubs to complete a commitment form if they have decided to participate in this campaign. It's a fairly simple form. We're not doing it to put pressure on you or to be authoritarian or anything like that. We just want to be able to track the campaign. And mostly, the most important thing is that we want to make sure that we're giving you what you need to make the campaign successful for your club. So we're asking you to decide by February 15th, which is, not very long from now, whether your club is going to put on an event and to submit this form by then. Step 2 is to plan the basics of your event. And of course, that includes the date and time that you'll hold it. I've already, given you the broad parameters there. And then where your event will be. And that will depend probably on how you're currently holding your meetings. So since I think most of us are still online, it would probably be online. But this is a really important point here, and it's also a really important moment in the history of Toastmasters because our trio recently attended mid-year training where there was a lot of talk about, well, what happens next? What happens after COVID? What are our clubs going to be like after we have the ability to meet in person again? And the consensus seems to be that many, many clubs are interested in not giving up the virtual aspect, but at the same time, going back to face meetings. So the talk right now is very heavily toward hybrid meetings where some attendees are live and some are virtual. So that's a model that you may want to consider for your event. Plus, it's a really good time to be thinking about the future of your club and what it's going to look like after we don't have any restrictions because of COVID. It's really important, obviously, to determine which members of your club will kind of chair the event, oversee the planning, and even more than that, who all will be on the team, because it's very difficult to put on an event like this without having a team behind you. So clubs should really think about building a team to put on this event. And also part of your team might be another club or clubs or organization that you might partner with. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the final question is, what approach are you going to take? What content are you going to offer? And who is going to be your target audience for your event? So we're offering three possibilities or three approaches to this event that you can choose from. And the first one is Speechcraft, which some of you are probably familiar with and some of you probably are not. If you're not familiar with it, one of the advantages of it is it's a tried and true way to introduce non-Toastmasters to the Toastmasters program. It's been used for many years. We've done it here in District 9. The prison clubs have made very heavy use of Speechcraft. And back in 2014, we did a full Speechcraft campaign. Another pro is that it's a kind of a nostalgic dip into the legacy program because it's based on the Competent Communicator manual. So if you're missing the legacy program, this is your last ever opportunity to take a little dip back into it. And even that only lasts until June 30th because at that point, Speechcraft will go completely to Pathways. Another advantage is that it's a quality program that's completely supplied for you. They've also developed, Toastmasters has also developed a new portal, an online portal for Speechcraft. I'm going to show that to you later. When I was rehearsing this, I discovered that it was really awkward and time consuming to switch back and forth from the slides to web pages. So I'm going to show you the web pages at the end. But it is a very high quality program that's where you don't really have to do anything extra to make it work. Another pro is that you can charge for it, and one possibility is to apply what you charge to membership dues. In other words, you could charge enough so that it would cover, you could make it just cover membership dues or for 6 months, or you could also include the $20 initial fee. That way they're paying for it, but they're also applying it to membership. You don't have to charge for it. There's some clubs that charge just a very nominal fee just so that participants have some skin in the game and they feel invested in the program. And there are clubs that have not charged anything for it. So that's just a possibility and something to consider. If you have costs for putting on the program, you might want to charge for it. Now, a few of the cons of choosing Speechcraft. Um, Based on what the district is able to provide, you would only be able to have 5 participants in your Speechcraft program because we're only able to provide 1 Speechcraft kit, and it's only good for 5 participants. Now I have an asterisk there because, of course, your club could choose to purchase additional Speechcraft kits so that you could have more participants. But in terms of what the district is able to provide in these very lean times, you could only have 5. And then another complication there that is sort of just because of the time and place that this is being offered. Clubs are going to have to put the money out up front for the Speechcraft kits and then be reimbursed by the district. And then I feel that it's both a pro and a con that Speechcraft is now really directly tied to pathways. The pro is that any of your participants will get credit in the Pathways program for any projects they complete in Speechcraft. The con and it's really pretty small, but in the old Speechcraft, I think you had a lot more flexibility to kind of adapt the program in a way that you felt worked for your club. And the example I offer there is, and I've mentioned this in some of the webinars before, my home club back in 2014 partnered with WorkSource and made our Speechcraft workshop into a job interview workshop. But that required a lot of adaptation of the curriculum. I had to basically, you do 3 speeches in Speechcraft, and I turned each one of them into an answer to an interview question. And that's a kind of adaptation I don't think you could do under the current the virtual model. Another special consideration is that Speechcraft requires at least 4 meetings or 4 sessions. And if you didn't want to burn 4 of your regular meetings doing Speechcraft, you could consider holding it outside the regular club environment. The disadvantage of that is that it's good to show your participants what Toastmasters is really like and to show it in the place, and whether that's online or offline, that it's normally held, and the day and time it's normally held. But you do have that option. And I say it requires at least 4 meetings because the other 2 models for Speechcraft are 6 meetings and 8 meetings. Um, some ideas for ways you could frame Speechcraft. Why do you need to frame Speechcraft in a certain way? Because nobody knows what Speechcraft is. Speechcraft is an inside Toastmasters term, and if you tried to market Speechcraft to the public, they would have no idea what you're talking about. So when we do Speechcraft, we don't. It's kind of like Fight Club. You don't mention Speechcraft. You just frame it as something like a confidence boosting workshop series, workshop for those terrified of public speaking, workshop series to build communication skills, something like that. Next option is targeting small business slash entrepreneurs or employers. And I acknowledge here that these 2 audiences are not exactly the same thing. With small business or entrepreneurs, you're probably targeting the entrepreneur himself or herself, because in a lot of small businesses, the entire business is the person who founded it and is running it. Whereas with employers, you're really targeting, you want an employer to come to your event, but you're really targeting the employees of the company, and you want the employer to see how Toastmasters can help employees by offering communications and leadership training. So they're not exactly the same audience. And the reason that I grouped them together was because I had already prepared a web page about small business, and I felt like they were close enough that I could group them together. Anyway, The pros, especially for the employer approach, is that this is a great way to raise awareness among employers of Toastmasters training, and how inexpensive it is, how it's self-paced, how it's really high quality training that employers can appreciate. Uh, the con is that although there are some resources provided by Toastmasters, depending on what topic or approach you use, you may have to develop some of your own content. And I'll get into this a little bit more in a little bit. Um, a special consideration with this type of audience is that you may need to develop a list of prospective attendees or invitees, because these are the kinds of events that are really going to benefit from personal invitations. I mean, you can put marketing out there that targets small business or employers, but you're also probably going to want to supplement that with invitations to specific employers and small business in your area. Actually, with employers, it's pretty easy to put a list together. I'm sorry, I went backward. I skipped ahead. There we go. Sorry. Um, it's pretty easy to put together a list of prospective employers. All you need to do is type into Google the name of your city and then something like top employers. And that will give you a list of like the 25 biggest employers, 15 biggest employers, 10 biggest employers in your area. And that's a really good starting place. And then all you have to do is look up their contact information. For small business, you might be able to get a list from the Chamber of Commerce, especially if your club were a member of the Chamber of Commerce. You might be able to, there might be some kind of publication or website in your town that lists small businesses. You might walk up and down Main Street and list small businesses, but it's a little bit more difficult. Some ideas for framing your event that's targeted to small business or employers: closing the sale, goal setting and planning, motivating people, servant slash service leadership, leader as coach, visionary leader. And up to that point in the list, there is a Toastmasters manual for each of those topics. These come from the old leadership and communication series. And the way they do these manuals now is that if you want to use one of those manuals, you have to download all of them. So it comes in a giant file of all of those manuals. And then the rest of them on that list: communicating with customers, telling your business story, perfect your startup pitch to investors, your professional presence. Those are all ideas that don't have a specific Toastmasters manual or piece of curriculum that you can use. However, the page that I made up for this particular approach has some other resources that you can use. Another possibility with this audience is to just do a Toastmasters demo or showcase meeting to show employers, show small business what Toastmasters is like and how it helps people with communication and leadership skills. Our third possible approach is targeting the general public or a segment of it with your event. Uh, a big pro of doing it that way is I think it's less daunting, because this approach is probably similar to events that your club has done in the past. This is more along the lines of open houses and showcases and so forth. The con is that it may be difficult to pin down the best audience and content. You may, if you attended our first webinar with Kyle Hall's video, he talked about how their club targeted realtors. He talked quite a lot about that, and that may or may not be a good audience for you to target. But as I say in the special consideration, it really is best to narrow down your audience to a specific segment if you possibly can. you will probably get better results if you target a specific segment rather than just opening it up to the world. So some ideas there of how you could frame the event, an open house or a showcase. And I think this next idea is really interesting. Most communities have some kind of famous people that people would that the community would love to come here speak, people who have something to say. And so I think it would be really effective to find one of these high profile people in your community, and also remember that you're not limited to your own community if you're doing a virtual event. And then another possibility is that we find that during the pandemic, the members of the Toastmasters board of directors, the international directors and international officers, are speaking to clubs. They're speaking to clubs in great numbers. You may have seen that our president, Richard Peck, has a goal of speaking to a club in every single country that Toastmasters is in. So these high profile Toastmasters people may not mean a lot to the general public, but we know that they have something to say and they're really good speakers. I think that also some of the people in the speech contest realm are doing some of this type of speaking and are more open to speaking to clubs because it gives them exposure that they wouldn't normally be getting during the pandemic. So I would encourage you to seriously consider a high profile guest speaker for your event. Other possibilities are a comedy event, improv event, storytelling event, workshop on conquering the fear of speaking, job interview workshop, a panel discussion of local authors or artists or poets or any kind of group of people, and a workshop on boosting confidence. Now we're getting into step 3, and this is our step where, as planning continues, we're working on making sure our clubs are prepared to make the best possible impression on guests. And I'm going
Kathy,
to, yes,
Kathy, may I interrupt just a minute? Do you want
you
any
certainly
questions at
may.
this? Do you want any questions at this
Sure,
point, or?
yeah, I was almost going to ask.
Okay, sorry. So, a few comments. One, are these slides available to people? And I said yes, they will be available. Did I misspeak?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Talking about interviewing workshop, Elaine Kelly, do you want to address what your club is doing or not? Elaine Kelly.
Um, our club has reached out to do community outreach and target specific groups. And right now we're working with some organizations in Spokane to do job interview workshops and mock interviews and do confidence building skills,
That's fantastic.
specifically for groups of people that are been released from the prison system and are needing that extra help.
That's fantastic.
Right, right. Thank you. And then Debbie Ford asked if you could do the speechcraft with, if you could do it half session during the regular meeting and then half outside of the regular meeting.
I think that's possible, sure.
All right. That's all the questions for now. Thank you, Kathy.
All right. So our next part is review, basically, because we've touched on all this in the first 2 webinars. I do recognize that not all of you were in both of those webinars. But the first part is assessing our readiness, really scrutinizing our club to see if it's ready for guests and, ready to make the best possible impression. So one way to do that is Moments of Truth. And if you're not familiar with Moments of Truth, it's a Toastmasters program that usually takes a full meeting, maybe even a little more than that. But it's a way of assessing the items, the 6 items over on the right of the screen that are important aspects of your club. The second item was one of the techniques suggested by Kyle Hall in his video in our first webinar. Invite a guest to be a mystery shopper and critique one of your meetings after attending. So ask a guest to come and observe the meeting and then tell you what's good and what could be improved about the club. And you can do the same thing with an area director. Invite your area director to attend, and they're a lot more interested in joining the club. We want to develop a mindset toward closing the sale and always asking guests if they would like to join the club. You can't join if you're not invited. Well, you can, but you're much more likely to join if you're invited. You want to make sure all your outbound information about your club is accurate and up to date. And that would be your website, your Facebook presence, your meetup presence, and your presence on Toastmasters Find a Club search engine. Make sure everything is completely accurate and up to date. And we also want to emphasize ways to optimize the virtual environment if our event is going to be virtual and if virtual is going to be part of our meetings going forward. Now, that, of course, was what the Cascade Club shared with us last week. So I'd like to do a little interactive piece right now and have you see what you recall from last week's webinar if you attended, and type in this chat box something that you remember from that webinar about optimizing the virtual environment. And if you were not in the webinar last week, see if you can come up with an idea of your own about how to optimize the virtual environment. What can you do in the Zoom or other video conference environment to welcome guests and make guests feel comfortable and blow your guests away? So let's take about a minute for that. And Deborah's going to be monitoring those responses and sharing them with us.
So one is to rename your screen to the name you have in your role, i.e. if you're the evaluator, you put evaluator in your name. If you're the general evaluator, you would put GE, or if you're the grammarian, timer, etc. Thank you, Mark Havens. Have a non-distracting background from Karen Mobley. Thank you, Dr. Catherine. Excellent first impressions by selecting well-versed presenters, fun-themed meetings, accent meeting. These are things Mike Anthony noticed about that. Always ask guests for a meeting evaluation. Thank you, Victoria Luba. Pin your timer's video to your screen. Dr. Catherine again. That's key because oftentimes when you're on Zoom, you can't find the timer. Pin the timer. We can talk about that later. From Deb Sterling, if you're going to get up and move around or you're going to be doing stuff like distracting things, stop your video so it doesn't come across on the camera. Acknowledge guests and start on time. Thank you, Beth. Welcome them out loud when they come to the meeting. Debbie Ford, we offer and protect the 15 minutes just before our club meeting starts as a networking opportunity for members and guests. Help them feel connected. My home club does that at the end of the meeting, so it's up to each club how they want to do that. Vicki Jones, use the virtual backgrounds. Also love the tickets handed out from Cascade 993, handed out tickets to come visit our meeting. Using the backgrounds when you're the timer, using the virtual backgrounds of red, green, and yellow, which are available for free download on TI's website. Remember to stay professional. You're not really in the privacy of your home, although you are, but it's still maintain that barrier of professionality. If you can't use the virtual background, make sure to hold the colored card highly visible the entire time, so you would hold it up in the camera. They appreciated the enthusiasm of the group, so I think that's it for now, Kathy.
Wonderful. I'm very proud of all of you for remembering so much from last week, and I also appreciate the new ideas that were shared. That was great. Okay, so step 4 is marketing your event. And here we start out with another review of Kyle Hall and his enhanced personal invitation techniques. The first one is to invite a guest to support you in something that you're doing for the first time at the event, such as giving a speech, or even if it's not the first time, just somebody supporting you at the event, giving a speech or serving in a role for the first time. We already talked about inviting a guest as mystery shopper. And his third technique is the bribery technique, which I think really probably only works for in-person meetings. Anybody remember what that is? You can unmute yourself and tell us what the bribery technique is.
I used to use the bribery technique of buying breakfast for whoever would join us at Perkins at 6:15 in the morning.
There you go. So coffee or a meal was half of the bribery technique, and the other half was driving the person to the meeting. So thank you for that, Vicki. Okay, so we're going to look at some nitty-gritty marketing techniques here. And the first one, of course, is your club website. And we already mentioned that it needs to be accurate and up to date. And you also probably want to promote your event right there on your website, on your homepage, and maybe even with its own page, its own separate page. I have the little graphic there that says Facebook event, but that really refers in general to marketing on Facebook and in fact, marketing in general on social media. I think that Facebook is a safe bet for most Toastmasters clubs. Kyle Hall talked in the first webinar about using social media that your club members already use, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that most of them use Facebook. But there may be others. They may use Instagram, they may use LinkedIn, they may use Twitter, they may use Snapchat. All kinds of possibilities. So it's what your club members are already using, what your community's using, what you're comfortable with, what you think will reach a lot of people. And I've talked in the past webinars about what the Facebook presence of a club actually looks like, whether it's a page or a group or both. And both is what I recommend because a page is good for targeting external audiences. A group is good for targeting internal audiences. And in terms of marketing your event, you're also going to look for other groups on Facebook where you could post something about your event. Look for community groups, look for even the classified groups. I think you would need to give the rules of the groups a good reading to make sure it's okay to post events in there. There are probably some groups in some communities that are completely devoted to events. So I would just, look for anything with the name of your city or town in the name of the group, and that's fair game, possibly for posting on Facebook. Meetup is a social meetings platform that every non-restricted club in the district has a presence on. So your meetings are already listed on Meetup, most likely, but I would suggest creating a separate event on Meetup for your event. And Karen Mobley is our Meetup coordinator. So if you need any help doing that, she can probably help you with that. The item in the middle there is a flyer, and I'm personally very curious about the connection between a physical flyer advertising a virtual event. To me, that's a little bit of a disconnect. So I'm not 100% sure that flyers are really super effective way to go for this particular campaign, but we do have lots of templates available. It's certainly worth a try. I don't know. I don't know how successful flyers would be. Over in the corner there, you see a little postcard. And I think that postal mail is actually worth considering, especially for the events like the employer events where you really want to issue personal invitations. Of course, the downside there is that postage is not cheap. So you probably would not want to do that on a large scale, but I think postal mail can be effective because people don't expect it. People don't get a lot of advertising by postal mail the way they used to. So it tends to stand out and be something a little bit different. And then the last piece here that I want to mention is community calendars, which I've talked about in webinars in the past couple times. It's easy to find community calendars online for your community. All you need to do is type in the name of your city and the phrase community calendar. You'll probably get about 5 or 6 results. And it's very easy to enter your event on those. I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute, but in the meantime, these are a couple of mock-ups of social media graphics that I created that are, what your social media might look like. I am perfectly happy to create either templates or full-blown graphics that you can use. A template would be kind of a basic design that you would plug in your own information on, and the full-blown graphic would actually have all that information on it. But I was being incredibly ambitious in imagining this fictional Toastmasters club called Big Mouth Toastmasters, who actually engaged the hottest speaking name in the country right now, Amanda Gorman, as a guest speaker. So I'm sure that would be a very big draw if somebody actually got Amanda Gorman. Anyway, those graphics are available to you, or you could do something like that on your own. And then here's the piece about the community calendars. What you're going to do here is write a 1-paragraph mini press release for community calendars, and you can also use it on social media. So over on the left, you see what that would look like. The name of your club invites the community to its virtual workshop, give the name of the workshop, who's presenting it, and then like a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what people are going to learn in this workshop. And then all your basic information about time and place and Zoom link and free and open to the public, and contact information for getting more information about the event and your website URL. And then on the right of the screen, you see a portion of a form for a community calendar. This is not the whole form, but you'll see that in addition to having little spots to capture the basic details like the date and the time, there's almost always in these forms a big text block where you can paste in this paragraph. So this is where you're going to insert your mini press release, even though it repeats some of the same information that they're capturing in other parts of the form. And then you can use that same paragraph to post in social media with or without a graphic. the advantage of doing text along with your graphic is that you probably have links that you want people to click on, and they won't be able to click on them in your graphic, but they will be able to click on them in your text. Just a couple things to remember when you're doing your marketing. Number one is to sell the idea of confidence as much as possible. Kyle Hall kicked off his webinar by talking about how that's what Toastmasters sells. We sell confidence. And studies have shown that the public, especially young people, are very attracted to this idea of confidence in relation to Toastmasters. And we also want to make sure we uphold the Toastmasters brand. We use the right fonts, the right colors, the right use of the logo. So it's important to make sure you take a look at the Toastmasters brand manual and make sure you're doing all of that correctly. Step 5 is to actually hold your event, and that's where you're going to deploy your guest protocols. Always, 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 whether it's an event or just a meeting, always ask your guests how they heard about your event or meeting. That's how you find out what your most effective marketing strategies are. Capture contact information, and if you use a Zoom registration form, that will capture your contact information for you. Close the sale whenever possible. Always ask your guests if they would like to join. Follow up with those who didn't join immediately, and consider asking guests to evaluate the event. And was it Mike who just said we should always ask the guests to evaluate? In any case, I agree. I think it's a really good idea. I had forgotten with the previous slide that I wanted to ask you what has worked for your club. So let's take another minute to, if you have anything that I haven't mentioned in terms of marketing that's worked in your club, please feel free to type that in the chat box. And even if it's something that I have mentioned, if there was something that worked especially well, type that in the chat box too, and we'll take about a minute for that.
This was prior. Deb Sterling said you could attach one of those flyers into your email response to somebody, so that would be another way to use the flyer.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that.
Deb Basinius, personal invitations, personal friend notices are communicating better. Twitter gave us a great global connection from Elaine.
Very cool. Take just a few more seconds, see if anybody else has any ideas.
I'm not seeing anything, but Elaine Kelly mentioned something about the branding changes, and I guess, Elaine, you may be up on something I'm not aware of. I know I keep a sticky note at my desk of what the colors are, branding-wise, and the font. So what did I miss?
TI just gave permission for clubs to pick some other colors.
Whoa.
Okay.
I actually have the TI colors memorized.
I know, me too. I was like, what? Okay, so now we're going to what? Fuchsia and hot pink and I don't know. Interesting. Didn't see that. Okay.
Do we have any other ideas in the chat box?
Make sure each guest has a host that attaches themselves to them before or after the meeting.
Okay. All right.
And then have your club info up to date in Find a Club, and that is critical, really. Find a Club on the TI website. If you've moved or changed or now online, whatever, go to find a club or go to your, log into your Club Central and update your club demographics of where they find yourself, because that's where Find a Club pulls it from.
Excellent. So step 6 is to debrief and assess your event. It would be really good if the event committee would meet, and even better would be the whole club meeting and determining the lessons learned from the event. And importantly, also identifying what was your most successful marketing strategy so you can apply that in the future. And then finally, that's supposed to say rinse and repeat at the top, but it says rise and repeat. It might be just as appropriate. But just, have this mindset, as Kyle Hall talked about, that events are the way to bring people to your club, and you need to keep doing them on a regular basis. And it would be really effective if you actually planned these a year in advance and calendared them out and so forth. So just keep events in mind and keep doing them.
One thing else that Elaine mentioned, and this is good for like your membership, VP membership, or whoever's having a private chat. If you save the chat for yourself, you will have that contact information. When Zoom saves the chat, they don't save the individual chats between each other. They just save the general chat. So that's a good point.
Okay, I'm going to take some more questions if we have them, but first I wanted to show you these websites. So first we have our overall Operation Reignite website. And there's lots of information on here, overview of the campaign, discussion of the webinars, which will be completed as of tonight. And then here's a table that has the campaign options. So you can click on each of these options and be taken to a page that gives you more information about those options. And then the third column tells you what the district will provide with each option. Then you have next steps and so
Kathy, would you back up just a little bit and show them where they can get the click on the recordings for the like Kyle Hall and Club Quality, and then of course this one will be posted there too.
Oh.
But you can see.
Yeah, even though these will be completed, you can still watch the recording. So you can watch the, it seems that we didn't record our webinar, but we did record we do have access to the video that webinar sprang from Kyle Hall's original Marketing 101 presentation. And then the Club Quality is here.
Good, thank you.
So then the Speechcraft fact sheet looks like this, just some ideas and tips for how to make the Speechcraft event a success. This is what the new Speechcraft portal looks like. I have absolutely no idea how to use it, but fortuitously, World Headquarters is planning a couple of webinars on February 17th and 18th. They're both the same webinar, but they're scheduled at different times to fit people's schedules. And those webinars explain everything about how to do the Speechcraft digital experience. So if you think you might be interested for your club to do Speechcraft for your event, I would definitely suggest that you attend one of those webinars. And then next we have, I can't get to them because next we have the targeting small business. or employers. And this again has lots of information about planning, promotion and marketing. This is the only one of the 3 pages that has templates for flyers. These are all Word flyers. And, I figured that they could easily be adapted to the other 2 approaches. So that's why I didn't do templates for all of them. And then the content section here is what I was talking about with the Toastmasters manuals that are available for these various topics up to the point of communicating with customers is the first one that doesn't have a Toastmasters resource. But as you can see, I've listed lots of other resources that could be used. I've also listed an activity that could be done at each of these workshops. And then finally, the third one is the targeting the general public. And here are some, this is a fairly small list of suggested segments of the general public, just a few ideas to get your juices flowing, just some food for thought there. And then this page also has some suggestions beyond what I gave in this webinar about ways that you might be able to do an event for the general public. And let's see. Oh, I meant to put the commitment form on here as well, but I neglected to do that. But you got to see a little piece of it in the slideshow. So I believe I am done sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any more questions.
So Dick Jensen asked, is last week's recording available? And yes, it is. Kathy just, when she was on the TMD9 website, she showed us where that was available. If you go to tmd9.org on the Operation Reignite, scroll down, and maybe we could even make it even more prominent in another location, but Kathy and I can talk about that, but it is available for download. Kathy, thank you so much. Who has questions for Kathy? That's a lot of information she went over. I think the biggest take home is a lot of tools here that she's provided for us, and hoping your clubs will go back and think about what you want to do and how you want to do that, and let us know. The commitment form, Kathy, is going to be on the website then?
Yes.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay, Anne.
It was kind of long, so I didn't want to chat it. When you were earlier talking about those topics, closing the sale, I think that was in the Better Speaker
Okay.
series. But is international, maybe not now, maybe later, tying in pathways, how they connect? Because I looked at some of those topics and those are pathways. I mean, in my head, I'm looking at some of the titles. I thought the coaching, oh, that's leadership development. And that would,
Yeah.
I think that would be a segue instead of using the older stuff, because then actually pulling from little minute things from different paths.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and quite honestly, I'm just not super pathways oriented myself. So, and I already had this material from before, so
Yeah, I just thought of it that
yeah,
maybe.
no, I think it's great. I mean, any of the competencies I think are fair game for a workshop.
Right, but because you don't have a path, that they would give some little bites for you to use, so you wouldn't have to bite 11 paths.
Yeah, no, and I think also the thing is, and that was a good point, I wanted to mention that too, is when you're working through your pathways, you're looking at these different projects and HPLs and different things, and you can go back and pull in those heritage or traditional or heirloom projects and refurbish them and create them anew in pathways. I think that's a good way to do that.
Or people who have different paths, they can use something and bring it to the team, I guess, for
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
thought of that. Thank you.
Are clubs combining events with meeting individual pathway Wayne, what are you saying? Wayne Rogers, would you help me with your question? Are clubs combining events with meeting individual pathway projects? I think this is what we were saying, is if you had an HPL or you had a team collaboration project, like right now I'm in team collaboration in level 3, I need to do something as a team. Certainly I could use a open house for my club meeting to do this sort of a pathway project and make that mutually beneficial. Is that what you were saying? All right. I also, we have some other questions for Kathy, or we're getting good feedback. Operation Reignite was on fire. Thank you, D9, for lighting the spark. Thank you, Elaine. I do want to thank Kathy so much for being the architect of all of this. It's just been awesome, and she's put so much good information out there for us on the D9 website. We need to, it's like a horse. We can all lead you to water, but you got to drink. I can't make you drink, so you're going to have to do that yourself. I hope you will get your clubs to do that. I do want to take a few minutes because it's just 7 o'clock, and I want to, for one, mention that tomorrow there's a club officer training makeup session that's at 9 a.m. The link is on the D9 website. I also wanted to mention that February 13th, as a part of that, is the What's Your Club Secret Sauce, where Vicki has invited everybody to the Advanced Club Audible Experience to also get some points for their club officer training. Kara Mobley, are you still on the call?
I am here.
I'm calling on you.
All right. So what have we got going on? We have dues are due. The membership renewals are now open. The cutoff is March 31st. When you receive dues in for your clubs, don't sit on them and wait to do a batch at the very last day of the very last moment you have. As you get it in, put it in. Give your members a chance, because if their dues are not submitted to Toastmasters, they are not eligible for speech contests. And we're going into speech contest season. How upset would your member be who's competing to know that, oh, suddenly they can't compete because your club treasurer couldn't be bothered to submit their dues payment? It's online. You don't need to mail it off. There's options. If you've got trouble, your treasurers are supposed to go to club officer training. Maybe make sure that they go to the session tomorrow if they're having trouble with understanding that they need to get their dues in and how to do it. There's lots of us around the district who would be a great resource. Email me, text me if your treasurers are struggling with the idea of how to submit member payments. Area directors, I know there's a number of you on the call. Time to get those visits in and get your reports in. Watch for information coming out in the Powerhouse Plus in a few weeks. We have the Talk Up Toastmasters contest, and you have the Q3 challenge coming up. You're underway right now. So get those DCP points in and use Operation Reignite to get your membership. Back to you, Madam District Director.
Thank you, Madam Club Growth Director. Very much appreciated. There's some good things going on in the chat box, and I wanted to share them because Kathy maybe not necessarily will see this. Many good comments to Kathy, but I wanted to especially call out this one from Deb Sterling. Kathy, really appreciate your well-organized and succinct presentation. Obviously, you have put dozens of hours into this initiative. I'm inspired to share this with my PR and membership committee this Thursday and make you proud with a great Operation Ignite project.
Yay.
Awesome sauce. Many kudos to everybody. Please go forth. Let's do. Oh, I did want to say one thing. It was I was told to keep it a secret, but apparently the secret's out. But our online convention for August will not be in Nashville this year. It will be online. And again, and I they haven't said this, but I'm going to assume it's going to be free since it's online. But that allows every one of us to attend the international convention without having to leave home. Uh, so that's all I have for now. Any last questions for us? I will stop recording. If you want to stay on, I'll be here to chit chat a little bit. All right. So good night, everybody, and I will hang around.